Thank you. Ranking Member Paul, recognized for your questions.
You mentioned in your testimony that the post office is different than other areas of government, that it has to operate like a private business. You also mentioned that about 80% of the volume of first-class mail has gone down over time. Can you think of a private business where 80% of what they're, doing to make money is going down in volume that would actually increase their employees?
Yeah, so, Senator, you keep asking, I didn't make the laws that organize the United States Postal Service, okay? I came in, as I said, to the condition that we had, and I'm trying to fix it. Now, you exaggerate the hiring aspects. I am 20,000 people less in employment today than when I walked in the door. Okay, I burned 50 million less work hours over last year than we did the year I walked in the door.
Is there more or less work being done by contractors versus government employees?
Well, that's a good point. I was a contractor in that industry, and again, I walk into the situation I had. The contractors that we had and the contracts that we had and the locations that we had were detrimental to the organization. So I had 2 points to get cost out. Do I shut down all my operations where all my people are, or do I bring in these contracting operations? I have changed huge contracts, from our priority mail system.
But I know of no one in private practice or investors who, give advice through a corporate board who would say, you have a declining business model, we're going to increase the numbers, but then when you have a choice of hiring contractors that won't be paid the same wages or pension benefits or health care benefits that you pay your employees, you're up 190,000. You've insourced 190,000 jobs. And it's just sort of inexplicable. The whole point of the reform of shifting the cost, it's not really reform, it's a shell game. We just took a bunch of things that are still costs on your books and we put them on somebody else's books somewhere else in government. It's still a massive cluster in a way that the debt problem is just shifted over to another account. But in doing that, the main thing you were trying to get away from was healthcare costs and pension, right? And so if you compare a contractor or a contracted employee to a government employee, an insourced employee, and you compare the health costs and the pension costs, they're dramatically higher for insourced. So by increasing your number of people who work for the government as opposed to contractors, you're compounding the same problem. You were here with us 3 years ago saying, we can't handle all these other expenses. We need to shift them somewhere else. And so the reform package did that. But in contrast, then you could continue to hire more people instead of saying, well, we have all these extra costs associated with government labor. Why don't we hire labor outside of the government and use contractors?
So in isolation on one element of the issue, which you seem to be focused on, perhaps you're right, okay? But I've come out of industry. I've been on boards. I've built an organization in this similar space with 20,000 people, worked in an organization with 100,000 people, okay, and have walked into a situation that had varying activities going on inefficiently across its operation.
But I would argue you would have treated your own business differently.
I have not converted 140,000 people to full-time.
Your business was successful, though, not by doing the decisions you're making now. This wouldn't have helped the private businesses.
I have to make decisions within the environment I have. If I move change a collection box time on a blue box, I have the rage of Congress bearing down on me. Okay, so there are trade-offs that one has to make in this step. At the end of the day, we have requirements to have about 20% of our workforce be pre-career, 80% of our workforce
You're delivering less mail, you need a smaller organization, not a bigger
We're actually
one.
growing in the package business. The objective here is to create an integrated mail and package network. An integrated mail and package network means less places, less contractor places, less of our own places, and putting people.
It's hard to point towards success when the debt last year was $6.5 billion and this year's $9.5 billion. That doesn't look like success under any sort of metric. That looks like it's getting worse. And the reason why labor is an important part of this is it's estimated that the labor is 80% of the cost of doing business for the post office. For UPS, which is unionized, but a private union versus a government union, it's about 50%. For FedEx, who's non-unionized, the cost of labor to the business is about 38%. So there are cost savings by being outside of government unions, frankly. Even private unions have some cost savings. But when we have a hole and we see a problem, we try to change it. Like, we have a pension problem in Kentucky. So we just simply said the new hires would not be in the pension system or get a different deal. We understood that the previous hires would have to get their pension. The new people would come under a new contract, and we'll dig our way out of the hole, and it's going to take us 20, 25 years to dig our way out of it. But we began doing it by actually offering defined contribution as opposed to defined benefit. You sort of did this and shifted the cost, but now we're getting more people. We're getting more government workers, and that's where the problem originated, was too many benefits to government workers.
Now, I don't know that I agree, again, with that premise, that's where the problem originally, the problem.
Is labor still about 80% of your cost? Is labor still 80% of the cost?
It's still 80% of our cost. So we have a plan to try and make labor, to make the labor cost that we have work, okay? And that means to create an integrated operation, okay? We have 500 different locations around the organization that we were processing mail, including our contractors. I'm trying to get down to 200.
Do you have the ability to hire new people under either a different pension or a different healthcare system, or do you have the ability to hire new workers for the government under a different pension or different healthcare arrangement than the previous? You had to hire them under, it's a deal, the union commands what the structure is, and you have to stay the same, right?
Well, the Senate and the House and administrations, when forming the United States Postal Service, made these rules that we have.
You're exactly right.
Not.
You're exactly right. And then when we looked at the reform, that was my suggestion, is if labor is 80% of your cost, you have to do something about your labor cost. Either outsource it, or what you need to do is provide a different alternative through pension or through health care. But we didn't do any of that. All we did was the shell game of taking all your costs and sticking it somewhere else.
How about we stop processing 20 million packages a day by hand? All right, how about we bought some conveyors? Okay.
How about you show us some cost savings?
We saved $2.5 billion in costs and $1.4 billion in
the debt went from
transportation.
6.5 to 9.5.
That's right. We had 20% inflation and I had fixed prices.
So did everybody else, but not everybody else in the private marketplace treating their business like a private entity lost an extra $3 billion. So it just isn't a success story, and it's not your fault.
So what would you like me to do?
I'm not blaming it all on you, but you're constrained by things. But to say it's not a problem, I think, is not to be, just not to be honest with yourself or with everybody else.
Well,
it's a huge problem, and it's a huge problem. And it's the way government works. And government just doesn't work very well. So we should try to minimize government. One way to minimize government is not to hire more government workers. Make government smaller, hire private workers, because private workers are more subject to the marketplace. And you would say to a private worker, we can't keep offering the same pension we've done for 40 years. We can't offer the same health care that we've done for the last 40 years. I don't think we're doing enough. I think we're going in the wrong direction.
My goal is to get the Postal Service workers to operate productively and efficiently, okay? And that's by giving them the tools and the facilities and the processes and the inspiration to move forward, okay? And from the standpoint of service and cost effectiveness of the labor dollar, I think there is much improvement that we have made and much improvement that we can get to. There are other burdens around the organization that I agree with you are a tough hill to climb, okay? But the operational aspects and the growth aspects of the organization, the competitive aspects that it could have deployed 20 years ago are what we're trying to do now. And while you are all messing around with what the legislation should be, I'm trying to deliver mail-in packages cost-effective in the best way possible, like a private industry would, like a UPS would. That's what I have expertise in, and that is what my target is operationally and growth-wise, is that the Postal Service should act like UPS and FedEx. With regard to all these other things that you all share responsibility in, okay? I'm happy to work with you, like I worked with you, Senator Peters, on getting the Postal Reform Act passed. I'm happy to do that. Let's do it. Okay, but right now, I know what I'm doing with regard to consolidating the organization, trying to move the organization forward to get work hours out, which we have, to get transportation costs out, which we have, right? And to grow the business, which we have. And we will continue down that path until somebody hauls me out of here.
Senator Carper, you're recognized for your questions.
Thanks very much, and welcome